This is Alastair, and welcome back to the AI Cognitive Shift. This podcast is a collaboration of the Venture Variety Show and AInews.com, in which we explore how AI is impacting society, culture, and the future of work. Today's guest is Tom Chen. Tom is Chief Product Officer at Aircall, a provider of an AI-powered communications platform. And this episode is all about voice and how AI is transforming the way businesses support their customers in real time. We talk about AI copilots for agents, real-world use cases from Aircall customers, and what's ahead for voice-based tech. Tom also shares how he's thinking about the line between helpful automation and human connection. So let's get into it and meet Tom. Tom, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing, Alistair?
I'm doing great this morning. It's still morning here in
Yeah,
the Bay Area.
it is a nice sunny day out here today, like most days.
I could talk weather all day long, but I'd love to talk voice AI tech as well. First of all, let's start with the basics. The company that you're with is Aircall. Tell us a bit more about it and what challenge are you solving?
And absolutely. To start, we call ourselves an AI-powered customer communication platform. That was a lot of words, right? And so for the uninitiated, just imagine you're a business owner. You have plenty of customers to talk to and communicate with, whether it's sales or support. And you have many different channels you want to support. One of them might be the phone, a voice channel. There could be SMS, WhatsApp, various different channels. And the Aircall really manages all of that for you, both via ability for your actual human agents, as well as a lot of the newer AI capabilities. And we do so across desktop, mobile, so you can have it really in the office on the go, and everything is centralized in a communication hub. And in the world of AI, because we're here to talk about that, Aircall, on top of that baseline communication application, we've got AI agents that really just do the communications for you. And then we also have what we call AI assistants that sit essentially with your agents and transcribe all the conversations live. They're able to give you the right hints and prompts throughout the conversation. They help your agents adhere to certain scripts or playbooks, and it really helps managers as well train up new employees. And so across all of that, you get Aircall, right? Really helping you, the communication hub for your company with a lot of AI support, assistance, and autonomy on top.
And the typical customer, what type of clients does Aircall
Yeah.
service?
We service what we call growing businesses. So we can go from all the way from SMB up to large enough businesses of a certain size. We don't quite do too much enterprise today, although we do have some large customers who are on the platform. But our bread and butter is really small to growing businesses. In the US, certainly probably considered mid-size. And then we do this globally across the entire world. And we don't really have any specificities on vertical.
What exactly are the customers coming to you for? They want AI-powered communications platform.
Yes.
What's their biggest need? Is it just having services 24/7? Is it just making the customer support calls more efficient?
Yeah.
What's their main pain point?
I think historically, the main point is that they first need a communication channel to do it with that's fully digital, right? That historically, that's always been the case. Now, in the world of AI, many more customers are now coming to us to get to a level where they can be more 24/7. And maybe one semi-hot take I might have is that if you don't have that in the next 5 years, more likely than not, you're going to be at a competitive disadvantage relative to your competition to have essentially always on open customer communication channels, whether it's for sales or support, because the consumer expectations are rising almost every day, B2B or consumer, and for you to have instantaneous response times at a level of intelligence, right, that is certainly beyond what an average human being might even have today, because AI theoretically just has such an ability to take in the knowledge, a corpus of information beyond what a human agent can at times. So that ability to have 24/7 instantaneous connection to your customers is going to just get more and more the standard over the next 5 years.
Is there anything coming that's really new and exciting in terms of AI-powered communications in the customer support toolkit? What's on the horizon?
It's on the horizon. The thing I just said is where I believe the world to be in the next 5 years. I think from a pure technology standpoint, you don't see too many of the voice agents out there. So I'll probably just focus a little bit on the voice agents. And partly is because voice agents are technically a lot more complex than what you might experience in a chat GPT. And part of that is because there has to be additional systems on each end to transcribe, like just we're doing right now, speech all the way to text, and then pipe that text into an LLM as a chat GPT would. And then after the LLM has spit out the response, then put it back into a human-like voice that is warm, that is interactive. Once when you go through these legs, your rate of error compounds drastically compared to what you might see in an LLM. And I'm sure if you're a user of LLM, you get a lot. You already see some of the problems with AI. It's not 100% accurate, it hallucinates. And on top of that, you've added a lot more components that can compound on top of that. And so that's probably one of the reasons you don't see as many voice agent deployments out there as you might think. Now, what makes it even more challenging for customer support, because you asked about customer support, is that most customer support happens over the telephone. And what happens with the telephone is that you just added another layer of complexity because the telco networks don't always have the most or the best connection. And then they do things that decreases the audio codec or the signals that you get. So the bits of the files are somewhat degraded. So now you add on top of everything I just said, plus some degradation in the audio signals that kind of get transmitted. It's maybe a 10x harder problem than what traditionally you might see in LLM. So one of the things I might be a little bit more excited about in the next 5 years is that rather than this system that we just talked about, there is a lot of research and development being put into what they call a voice-to-voice model, which is the input is the voice. The model directly takes that, and you don't have to stitch together the speech to text and the text to speech. And what could be interesting about a voice-to-voice model is that it also can interpret signals around your intonation, your emotions, and be able to use that and have a much more human-like experience. And that OpenAI has a little bit around this. We've done some testing, but it's probably still on the immature side. But I think in the next 5 years, you'll see an even greater leap in terms of this voice technology, and voice-to-voice models are probably one of the frontier research area that's going to unlock that.
Will customers even know it's AI? Because
Most
when I
customers
use,
do.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think most customers do know. In
But
fact,
they
we
know
actually,
now, right?
yeah, now in the future, I don't know. Yes, I don't necessarily know, but I think you see some demos out there that are really good, but most of them happen over WebRTC for all the telephony reasons I just mentioned. Once when you go over telephony, you're basically putting modern technology on an older infrastructure, and I think you'll have a degraded experience until even some of the infrastructure of communication improves over time.
So 5 years, I'll circle back to you and we'll see how
Absolutely.
voice AI tech is working. Or maybe I'll just have voice AI podcaster interview you next time. Because, I
Actually,
mean,
it's funny that you say that because we're actually currently looking at, as we're a software company, we're currently looking at an AI interview product
right.
that does exactly what you just said. We're trying to get consumer research, but we want unstructured feedback from some customers, not a survey. And there's lots of companies out there doing that. And we're actually literally in the process of probably procuring one of those.
Tom, just taking a step back, how does Aircall itself use AI, either internally or within the product?
Two I'll bring up that I'm particularly proud of. One of them is easy to see on the surface. So we actually ended up building our own AI-powered, LLM-powered chat with customers, which I think most companies don't choose to build internally. They probably choose to buy something off the shelf because that's such a solved use case. So if you go to support.aircall.io, you'll experience this. It essentially ingests our hundreds and hundreds of pages of a knowledge base. And because our product can at times get quite technical, this is actually quite a good use case for it because we're not just answering simple questions. We're answering some at times very onerous, and difficult questions on the technical level. And the reason we chose to build it was one, due to timing, I would say. And the second is, this is part of my philosophy, is that it's really hard to know what you're buying and whether or not it works if you don't really have intimate knowledge of how it all works sometimes. And this is especially true when there's a new technological leap. Or you can choose to just be behind or slow, right? And we took an active kind of stance, hey, we want to be at the frontier of this stuff. And so unless you build, you just don't really know the ins and outs. So we ended up choosing to build. And so we used our own engineering resources to build the use case of on support.aircall.io, a chat support system. And through all of that, it's been incredible learnings. But I also think that experience is much better than any of the off-the-shelf ones that we were able to do because it's curated to how we want to talk about this with our brand, and as well as all the little fine-tunings that you have to do with our knowledge base. And for us, we chose to build. And since launch, now we handle over thousands and not tens of thousands of queries a day just on that platform alone, and really positive feedback. And while we still occasionally spot some hallucinations or inaccuracies, I think the benefits have far outweighed the costs on this one. But not a super unique and hot take kind of a new use case. But I think maybe the unique thing we did was actually build it internally and try to buy it, because that's such a common use case for most customers.
Speaking of use cases, I'm curious to hear more going back to the customers. How are they using
Yeah.
Aircall? What are they doing with AI that's unique and different? Yeah.
There's so many fun ones to talk about. I think that probably I'll focus a bit more on using Aircall's voice agent to more autonomously handle conversations. The easiest use cases are the ones that what I describe as no downside use cases. So these generally happen to be after hours 24/7 support. They generally happen to be things like take down the information, and then my agent will call you back during business hours. And if you think about it, let's say take two companies side by side. One company, the phone just doesn't pick up. The other company, the customer calls, and then you take down the information. The probability that this customer is going to choose the second company when the time comes to purchase decision is probably much, much higher. They've already had a first contact where they emotionally somewhat invested in answering some questions. More likely than not, inside your systems, you already know some initial conversations and answers. And for the most part, you already have an advantage, right? So that particular use case is the first fastest adoption, I would say, on Aircall. And then as customers continue to go, now we start getting overflow use case. So we just had an incident last week, and we literally can't handle the call volumes that are happening. We're going to put Aircall right at the top to just tell customers, hey, we got an incident happening, and then here's what to expect. Your wait times could be a little bit longer, and it's going to take some of those calls initially before it figures out, okay, this is a question I may not be able to answer. Here's a human agent that can help you. And so now it gets to that. The other more fun one happened over 4th of July. And this is the one that I think almost kick myself a little bit on not really leaning into this a little bit more, which is we started seeing a lot of fireworks companies use it. And it's for a good reason. During 4th of July, that's where their sales are the greatest. And believe it or not, it's not easy to just go find people to help you support customers or take calls on short notice like that, right? You can't find people to just do it for one weekend. No one really takes that kind of job. So then most companies have to go out there and use like answering services, which are these agencies or local, and sometimes they're BPOs for offshore. And you'd be like, here's a script that you should follow. Here are the answers. And really you can just set that up on Aircall in less than probably a few minutes. And so there was a flood of kind of 4th of July companies and some of them are funny. It's just, okay, if you're in this city, please go to this location. They're just really trying to manage that one most important weekend for them. And it's where their sales are the highest, and all these fireworks companies. So that was interesting to see.
And listening to you talk about Aircall support, I was thinking, gosh, we went from I could only call from 9 to 5 in a certain time zone, and I had to check, oh, wait, this is central time zone. Wait, I have to do the math. Now customers do you find that, are you hearing feedback from your clients that customers want 24/7 support? I suppose if you deal with business internationally, that is also a concern, but are we changing how we as a people want and demand support at all hours of the day and night?
I think so. Just consider your personal life. A lot of times I get home from work and I have a couple of nitty gritty errands to take care of. I didn't have time to call or get that resolved during business hours. So It is much nicer to be able to do that after hours. And sometimes I could be traveling abroad, right? So there are definitely a lot of use cases. I'd say there's almost no downside to being able to do that other than cost to the business. But with I think that cost starts to become a lot more viable. And I think it also makes your operation more efficient, such that during business hours, you can save a lot more on leveraging a combination of AI and humans. And then also AIs are getting so much smarter nowadays that they can help orchestrate the entire operations better. And that savings you can reinvest back in better coverage and all of that. That's what we see customers do a lot. And then there's actually more interesting things where customers who historically don't even have voice as a channel, because voice is the most expensive channel to support, right? You actually have to have a real human. There was at least in the past 15 years, there was this trend on moving more towards chat and email and asynchronous channels, maybe even live chat. You wouldn't consider it asynchronous, but certainly it's not a voice conversation. What we see with the onset of AI is that as AI is able to autonomously do more support for customers, these same companies are trying to find an edge. And where do they find the edge? The human element, like being able to offer up humans, is now the more scarce. And in the future, it's going to become even more scarce. And so that's their competitive advantage. And now companies who didn't even have human voice support have carved out at that efficiency needed to say, okay, now I can offer some of that, but they just need to be able to figure out when, right? When out of all the different cases they offer that up. So that orchestration and the management of the entire operation becomes critical. One fundamental truth in the world is that businesses are always hyper competitive. Or at some point, they're going to find what makes a better customer experience. And I do fundamentally believe that almost all companies, they're going to have 10,000 cases of customer conversations. There's going to be some few of them in which a human to a human conversation is going to make the difference. And the competitive nature of these businesses is going to drive the discovery of what those are. So one of the funny things that kind of happens is just these companies that never even had voice in their minds are now starting to come to the voice channel to be like, look, we're really trying to gain that edge. And how do we do that? Because at the end of the day, it is the peak customer support experience in some cases, and they are going to find them.
How is AI changing the role of the managers too? That's being impacted as well, isn't it?
It absolutely is. I'll give you one good example of where the manager thing comes in. One of the previous jobs of any manager, whether you're a sales manager or support manager, is that you have to figure out how to evaluate your frontline agents and how they do. So in the very old days, let's say you were just in a telephone center, you probably actually sat next to them, right? And then you would grade them as you go. And then as things got more digitized now, like Aircall was one of the first to really digitize the phone conversation. You can now listen to recordings. Maybe you don't have to sit next to them, but in the evening times, you would open up some recordings, sample a few of them, listen to them, and then grade them. And now with AI, there's two very distinct things that we see with Aircall. We offer a lot of these features as well. One of them is post-call automated grading. So what the AI does is, like, here's what a good call looks like. Was the agent super friendly? Did they greet him appropriately? And in the sales world, there's all of these sales frameworks that they expect their agent to follow. And in both of those cases, the AI essentially does a really good job, I would say, of grading those calls. And then also on top of that, providing the feedback. So this call was scored on this across these criteria. Here are some of the ways you can improve. It would then give the manager the report, also give the employee the report, and so the employees can self-improve. So that's a huge unlock on behalf of the manager. Manager, in some ways, they will have to still sample some of these, and there's still very nuanced things that they have to talk about, but that's a huge lift off of what they used to do. The second big thing that the AI does, and this is something that no manager could ever do before, because they can't possibly monitor 100 different calls or 200 different calls and try to interject. We have in our AI Assist Pro offering the ability to live interject by the AI. And what the AI does is it transcribes and it keeps tabs on the conversation. It's sitting side by side with the human agent, and it detects certain topics that are critically important, and it'll give you the frequently answered question that the internal company already knows. So one good example of this is we were talking to this healthcare, I think it was an insurance company recently, and what they were saying is that there were between 5 to 10 subjects that are very sensitive, right? That they have to nail the question. They also have a huge turnover in the agent population because these jobs are not always, you don't always get to keep folks around for that long. So the training aspects are critical. And the reason those 5 to 10 topics are super important is if you give the wrong answer, the company's actually liable for monetary damages. So they were extremely keen on having our AI be able to detect that and just surface the right answer right then and there, because they're looking at this and they're saying every one of these conversations is a high liability. I want the human to be there, and I want AI assistance right on top, live, accurate, and et cetera.
In recent weeks, personally, I've had to call a bank and
Yep.
my health insurance, speaking of which. And then afterwards, I was sent a questionnaire. Humans still have to answer questionnaires after customer service calls. Is there a value in it? Yeah,
Probably, I think,
probably.
and companies are incentivized to do it mostly because they want to. It's a lot of good quantitative data to evaluate even the AI
With
aspects.
AI, yeah,
Yeah,
taking
yeah,
over.
yeah. And that's how they can improve the configuration, tuning of their AI agents over time as well. So I think that practice will continue to go.
Could I have my own voice AI agent
Absolutely.
just call my bank and then the two of them can work it out?
That is absolutely going to happen.
Yeah.
Voice cloning is pretty common nowadays, right? So you can not only have your own voice AI agent, but you can have one that sounds exactly like you. For all we know, in 5 years, this conversation we're having could literally be AI to AI with the metaverse things that are happening and voice AI that's cloning. So I do think that will happen relatively soon. We've actually internally tested some AI to AI conversations, and some of them are fascinating to listen to. But overall, I think that's going to happen. More likely than not, I even anticipate Apple and Google with iPhone and Android allowing you to configure your own AI to just respond to different callers at different times. And I think that's going to be a consumer thing that more likely happens faster than some of us might like to believe.
Fascinating conversation, and learned a lot here about voice AI tech. Tom Chen, Chief Product Officer at Aircall, thank you so much. This was great.
Thank you, Alastair. It was a pleasure on my side as well.
That was Tom Chen from Aircall. And a few things stood out to me, especially the idea that voice calls are now a data source, not just a support channel. And I like Tom's framing of AI not as a replacement, but as a real time coach for customer facing teams. So if you like this episode, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the AI Cognitive Shift, which you can find on YouTube. And be sure to follow ainews.com for more AI-related news. If you've got guest suggestions or ideas on where AI is changing work and communications, drop a comment below. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for listening.